Welcome to Monday on CBC News BC. I'm Michelle Gassoub in the CBC newsroom in Vancouver. Let's get you up to date. Drivers could face delays this morning as crews continue to work on the Patello and Stallo Awesome bridges so final connections can be installed. TransLink says the full closure is needed to allow crews to finish connections to roadways on either side of the new bridge. The Patello Bridge sidewalk remains open for pedestrians and cyclists. The closure is scheduled to last until Friday. And on Cortes Island, a 3-week ferry shutdown starts today. To get to Vancouver Island, Cortesians usually take a 45-minute ferry to Quadra Island and then another 10-minute ferry to Campbell River. But all ferry service is cut until March 1st. BC Ferry says the service disruption will allow it to upgrade the terminals that connect Cortes to Quadra to make room for its new island-class vessels. Mark Vonash is the regional director for Cortes. He says residents on the island are prepared for the most part. And Premier Eby is pushing Vancouver forward as the home of the new international headquarters of the Defence, Security and Resilience Bank. The DSRB is a new institution focused on financing defence, security and resilience projects for NATO and allied nations. Canada is competing against several other countries for the new bank, which could create up to 3,500 jobs. Eby says BC is well positioned to win this bid.
Within this country, British Columbia and Vancouver represent the future of the Canadian economy. We will be the economic engine of this amazing place we call home. And part of that will be hosting multilateral institutions, given our new central location between our allies in Asia and our allies in Europe, as we work together to ensure the security of this country and to protect the values that we all hold dear as Canadians.
Ontario is also competing for the headquarters. The bank is expected to be fully established by the end of 2026 and will include up to 40 member countries. The new report from Vancouver's Auditor General suggests the city may have missed out on millions in sales of public land. The audit found the city couldn't show it maximized value in land sales because it lacked a clear strategy and kept poor documentation. The report reviewed 16 major transactions between 2016 and 2024. In 2 cases, payments were delayed for years and the city didn't charge interest even though policy required it. The report says the city lost about $26 million in interest payments.
Taxpayers should be concerned in the sense that when I mentioned that there's only one chance to get it right. And once a piece of land is sold, it's gone. You only have one chance to maximize value. We have all local governments, Vancouver is no exception, are under a lot of financial pressure. And every opportunity to get the most out of transactions like this is an important part of keeping taxes down and making sure that we have the funds to maintain necessary infrastructure.
The city argues the audit doesn't fully reflect how complex land negotiations can be. And Filipino BC announced its new proposed site for a future community and cultural centre will be at Southwest Marine and Yukon Street near Cambie. Last year, Mayor Sim announced plans to build the centre at the site of a hotel in Mount Pleasant.
We weren't opposed to additional cultural assets. We just wanted to make sure that the community was engaged in an honest and transparent way.
3 locations were identified during consultations. The other 2 were in the Joyce-Collingwood area and in Surrey. You're watching CBC News BC. BC Today is next.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Post-secondary grads are facing an uphill battle when it comes to finding a job, especially in BC. We'll take a look at the lack of employment for today's youth. And do you let your dog run off leash, or do you keep them tightly tethered? We'll look at both sides of the canine conflict in our second half. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. And thanks so much for joining us here on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. Are you a recent post-secondary grad who is struggling to find a job? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call us at 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And the Canadian employment landscape was a mixed bag in January, with the economy losing 25,000 jobs, but the unemployment rate cooling to 6.5%. This is according to a Stats Canada report released on Friday. To add to this data, youth unemployment has climbed to a 15-year high across Canada. In BC, the rate for 15 to 24-year-olds reached 13% in December, up from 8% 3 years ago. That's according to the Labor Force Survey results from December. So we're asking you, are you struggling to find a job? Or do you know a recent post-secondary grad who is looking to find work? Call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone, or you can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and our email address, bctoday@cbc.ca, and you can also leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Joining us now is Pete Nelson and Jairo Yunus. Pete is the Senior Economist at the Labour Market Council of Canada, and Jairo is the Director of Policy of the Business Council of British Columbia. Hello to both of you.
Hi, Amy.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Pete, I'll start with you. You recently published a paper on how the job market is changing. So maybe just give us a breakdown of your findings when it comes to post-secondary grad employment rates.
Well, I mean, certainly it's a very difficult job market right now for people who are coming out of post-secondary. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, the unemployment rates are at about a 15-year high. So we really haven't seen them this elevated since the aftermath of the global financial crisis. Temporarily after COVID, but that cooled pretty quickly and the unemployment rate came down. There's different factors at play here. You know, one of the factors is that we are operating in an environment right now where there's a tremendous amount of economic uncertainty. Mm-hmm. When there's this much economic uncertainty, it makes it very difficult for businesses to make these big investment plans and, you know, hire a lot of people and so on and so forth. The tendency tends to be to just wait and see how things are going to shape up once the dust settles. And when that's the case, it makes it a very difficult job market to break into. On top of that, when there's so much economic uncertainty, less people are going to leave their jobs. Mm-hmm. And so there's just less turnover. There's less opportunities to break into it. And so there's certainly an element of this that those economic conditions. One of the other things that is somewhat controversial that people like to talk about are the impacts of AI. Mm-hmm. I think that in some areas like software engineering, you're seeing impacts that, at least to me, and with my analysis with the LMIC, seem clear, but in other areas that's probably more limited so far.
All right, and Jairo, I'll ask you, what do you attribute this increase of youth unemployment to? It's increased by 5% since 2023.
Yeah, and in fact, in BC, youth employment is about 5% lower than what it was in 2019. Mm-hmm. So that makes us the only province where youth employment has not fully recovered, has never fully recovered. And I believe that reflects a broader issue in BC's economy. When you look at where youth employment declined, it's concentrated in private sector entry-level industries. For example, accommodation and food services, youth employment in that industry fell by 25% compared to 2019. Retail fell down by 10% compared to 2019. And these are traditionally the main entry points for young workers. And as I mentioned, that reflects a broader issue in BC's economy, which is that private sector employment growth has been very anemic, has been about 7% compared to public sector employment growth, which has been well over the 30% since 2019. So when the private sector isn't expanding, when the private sector is not doing well, those entry-level jobs are the first to disappear, and young people feel it the most.
And we've also seen job losses in manufacturing and education, public admin. Those industries all hit very hard over the last several years, even of course in the last year with the threat of tariffs and global economies just being thrown off. We know we're living in uncertain times in terms of the economy in BC, but how are we looking compared to the rest of Canada? What does your data sort of say in terms of where we stand with the rest of the country?
I mean, the unemployment rate for youth in BC it's a hair lower. It's about a percentage point lower than the youth unemployment rate in Canada overall. And if you're looking at youth who have a bachelor's degree, this is a cohort that's been particularly hard hit in Canada. Again, the unemployment rate for youth with a bachelor's degree is a little bit lower in BC than the rest of Canada. But with that being said, it's a silver lining, but the rate is still very high. Both of them are at 15-year highs if you're kind of taking out the 2020 aberration of the pandemic. And so, yeah, this is, it's relatively better than the rest of Canada, but still pretty tough to break into.
It's still not great, yeah. And I'd love to have people join our discussion. If you are a post-secondary grad and you are still struggling to find work, let us know, share your story. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca, or leave a comment on our TikTok. CBC British Columbia is where you can find us. And Jairo, you mentioned earlier about AI and how that is starting to eat up some entry-level jobs. Do we need to maybe reframe the way we look at AI and train ourselves? Poor choice of words, but sort of train the youth to work with AI and to sort of cater themselves into that stream instead of just fighting against it.
Well, we don't have right now clear data as to what's happening between AI adoption. Is AI adoption really high in businesses? And then a second order question is that impacting entry-level jobs or other types of jobs? So right now we can't be really for sure if AI is going to have an impact. That may or may not be the case. What we are seeing right now is that our issues with youth employment reflects a broader kind of issue in our provincial economy, which is that the private sector has been weak for several years now. And weak youth employment numbers have consequences beyond the actual numbers. Young people bring new ideas, they bring new energy, they're bring more creativity into the economy. They're often the ones adopting the new technologies, for example, and new ways of working. And when they can't find opportunities here, many vote with their feet. And we're seeing some of those young people leaving to Alberta, where the cost of living is lower, when there's more opportunities. And there's also a fiscal impact to this. Young workers tend to contribute more in taxes than what they consume in public services. And that when that happens, the tax base shrinks and the burden on everyone else grows. So I believe this is right now, at least, without making any assumptions about the impact of AI, it really reflects a broad weakness in private sector employment growth. Like I said, only 7% increase since 2019.
All right. We did get a comment on our TikTok from Dylan Dan. It says, trades are booming and are only going to become more and more in demand. Great pay and benefits. Also, I find that a lot of youth in high school aren't getting the right preparations to enter the industry. We also had an email from Randy in Burnaby, and he writes, I'm hoping that many many of the grads have chosen trades with a lot of emphasis on electrical technology and engineering. We don't need more commerce and finance people. The growth in that sector will be stagnant and possibly negative. The global economy is hurting, and we Canadians are not immune. So that's two people that are commenting on how perhaps we need to look more towards, the trades and opening up training in those arenas for the youth. Pete, I wonder, is it now that we need to start thinking sort of outside the box when it comes to post-secondary education? It used to be you went to university, you got your degree, and that was sort of your ticket to get a job, and we're not seeing that anymore. So will we see a shift of more people going into trades or the gig economy instead of going to university and then automatically getting that job?
Well, listen, let me start by saying that I still think that there's tremendous value in going to university and getting a bachelor's degree. So, I want to be careful before I, say that there's not as much value in that pathway.
Sure.
But what we've been seeing is that there is this trend in Canada where we are overproducing graduates in fields where there's not that many job vacancies, and we're underproducing graduates in fields like the trades, like healthcare, where there are more opportunities. And this is not something that's been transpiring just in the last 4 or 5 years. This is a decades-long trend. If you look at the data from 1990 up until the present day, over the last 35 or 36 years, the number of people going to university has exploded. The number of people who are going and taking a post-secondary certificate or diploma, going to a college or polytechnic institute, has been relatively flat by comparison. And so there really is something to be said here, and it is, we have to get the right information in front of youth so that they're aware of the occupations that are in demand, the skills that are in demand, so that they can make the best decisions to do the best job they can to get the best labor market outcome.
And as part of that, Pete, do you think that there is value in making sure that grads are sort of being AI ready as they look to find positions in post-secondary work?
Well, I think one thing you can do, it's always tempting when we look at a situation like this to try to draw historical parallels, and they're never perfect. But if you look at the dot-com bubble, there was concern that, as we move from these analog systems to digital systems, this increasing wave of automation might be, again, difficult for young workers and make it more difficult for them to break in. What actually transpires in the long run is that these younger people who were graduating were digital natives. They were most familiar with this technology. And so they came in, they were able to be more competitive, more productive. And the people who actually had a more difficult time being competitive in the labor market were these kind of, middle of career, more experienced workers. And so there's something to be said about, as this technology is up and coming, and, the point should be made that, we don't have enough data to say that conclusively it's having a huge impact on youth unemployment right now, but it's a growing technology. And there's something to be said about leaning into this, using this to, bring these, creative new ideas and the ability to be more productive into industry and, lean into those advantages.
All right. And we still have a bit of time left in this segment. So again, I'd love for any recent post-secondary grads to join our conversation and share your story. Maybe you're all too busy at work. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. Hi, Rose, as a director with the BC Business Council, what advice do you have for young people who are, trying to get into the workforce that not only will pay their bills, but really pave the way for a viable future and for a strong economy here in BC?
Yeah, my advice to them is to stay strong, stay resilient. We've been here before. Right now, we do have a problem when it comes to youth employment and youth employment levels and private sector job growth. We can't, and my message to everyone in the province, not only young people, is that we can't grow our youth labor market without a strong private sector economy. Entry-level jobs don't appear on their own. They come from businesses investing, they come from businesses expanding, from businesses hiring. And right now, and over the past few years, again, back to my point, is that weak private sector investment and slow economic growth are limiting job creation, especially for young workers. So all of us as British Columbians, we want better outcomes for the youth. So the focus has to be on improving those conditions under which firms of all sizes and in all industries can invest, can hire, they can boost productivity. So without that, there simply won't be enough entry-level jobs for people. And it's important to hone in on this because that's a growing economy supports those jobs for young people. And we have to make sure that policymakers in Ottawa, in Victoria, in Edmonton, in all the provincial capitals are aware of this reality that we need a growing economy to support affordability, to support jobs for young workers.
Pete, what about you? What's your advice for anybody that is, graduating and looking to start their career?
I think the foundational thing is to take in as much information as you can so that you don't get caught flat-footed, you're agile, you can adapt to an environment that's changing very rapidly and is particularly dynamic right now. So look at the skills that are growing in demand, look at the occupations that are growing in demand, and this will help you make informed decisions about the training or educational pathway that you go down. This is absolutely foundational. And there's great resources with Statistics Canada. LMIC, where I work, is putting out a dashboard that will help with this next week. And so this is very important. Just take in as much information as you can, prepare yourself as best as you can. And, to tie into what Jairo was saying, this is something that it doesn't just impact the youth. This impacts the entirety of British Columbia. Canada and British Columbia, like most advanced economies, is a consumption-driven economy. And so when you have youth who are struggling to, put away savings and get good employment opportunities, then what that means is that as they, kind of grow into that middle consumption base that's driving our whole economy forward, they're not going to be able to, go out and spend as much and stimulate our economy. And it really puts us behind the 8 ball. And so this doesn't just impact them. This really impacts our economic trajectory. This is very important, and it impacts us all.
And I thank you for that reminder. And just before I let you go, Jairo, is there any reason to feel optimistic? We only have about a minute left in the segment, but loaded question. Is there some hope, some silver lining?
Well, I like to say that the night is darkest just before the dawn. So hopefully policymakers everywhere in the country, and they are doing it. So for example, the province is investing in trades, in apprenticeships. That is important. It is important for young people to do their research, to look up skills, where can they match their skills with potential job prospects. But that has to be paired with a focus on growing our economy, on making sure that the private sector is strong so they can invest, so they can hire more people, so they can provide higher wages for young workers. So like I said, right now it seems that we are in a bad place, but things can improve. Things that are in our control can improve. And things like taxes, things like our regulatory system, looking at some of the permits, some of the regulations that are happening. How do we make sure that our environment, our policy environment, which is something that we can control, is conducive to a growing economy, to a strong private sector, where youth entry-level jobs are being created for young people. And we here, like I mentioned before, here in BC, we're losing young people to places like Alberta because the cost of living is lower there. And because there are more job prospects for them there. So it's important that, like the other guest said, it's important for us to make sure that this is a all hands on deck situation, that it matters for all British Columbians, not just young workers. So hopefully we'll get out of this.
All right. I want to thank you both for joining us today. Such an important topic. That is Pete Nelson, a senior economist with Labour Market Council of Canada. He joined us from Calgary. And Jairo Younes is the Director of Policy of the Business Council of British Columbia. And he was joining us from Vancouver. And Premier Eby is pushing Vancouver forward as the home of the new international headquarters of the Defence Security and Resilience Bank. The DSRB is a new institution focused on financing defence, security and resilience projects for NATO and allied nations. Canada is competing against several other countries for the new bank, which could create up to 3,500 jobs. Eby says BC is well positioned to win this bid.
Within this country, British Columbia and Vancouver represent the future of the Canadian economy. We will be the economic engine of this amazing place we call home. And part of that will be hosting multilateral institutions, given our new central location between our allies in Asia and our allies in Europe, as we work together to ensure the security of this country and to protect the values that we all hold dear as Canadians.
Ontario is also competing for the headquarters. The bank is expected to be fully established by the end of 2026 and will include up to 40 countries. And a new report from Vancouver's Auditor General suggests the city may have missed out on millions in sales of public land. The audit found the city couldn't show it maximized value in land sales because it lacked a clear strategy and kept poor documentation. The report reviewed 16 major transactions between 2016 and 2024. In 2 cases, payments were delayed for years, and the city didn't charge interest, even though policy required it. The report says the city lost about $26 million in interest payments.
Taxpayers should be concerned in the sense that I mentioned that there's only one chance to get it right. And once a piece of land is sold, it's gone. You only have one chance to maximize value. We have all local governments, Vancouver is no exception, are under a lot of financial pressure, and every opportunity to get the most out of transactions like this is an important part of keeping taxes down and making sure that we have the funds to maintain necessary infrastructure.
The city argues the audit doesn't fully reflect how complex land negotiations can be. It is 12:30. It is time now for the CBC News with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The BC Green Party is stepping away from its deal to support the NDP. Leader Emily Lowen says targets and policies they support are not being delivered. Lowen says they will now consider and vote on each bill on a case-by-case basis. The provincial government is supporting a private sector bid to locate the new international headquarters of the Defence Security and Resilience Bank here in Vancouver. The bank is focused on financing projects for NATO members and allied nations. Canada is one of the leading countries to host the headquarters, and Premier David Eby says Vancouver is an ideal location. And the Vancouver-based company that operates a mine in Mexico says it has been told a number of workers have been found dead. Last month, 10 employees at the site in Sinaloa were abducted. Vizsla Silver Corporation says it's devastated by the loss of life. And now the forecast on the north coast. Showers this afternoon. There's also a risk of thunderstorms with a high of 6. Highs around 3 and mainly sunny in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a chance of showers and flurries with a high of 4. Highs up to 6 and mainly cloudy this afternoon in the West Kootenay. A bit of sunshine in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly cloudy with a high of 5. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, showers in some areas this afternoon with highs around 9. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. And Metro Vancouver is walking back a proposed rule change at Pacific Spirit Park. The plan would restrict many dog-friendly trails to being on-leash only and reduce the number of trails that dogs are welcome on. Now, the rule change was prompted after a number of reports about safety incidents in the park involving off-leash dogs, 400 over 5 years. However, there was some public criticism over the potential changes. So Metro Vancouver has voted to further consult park users and increase enforcement and education around current bylaws for now. So what do you think? Should dogs be allowed off-leash in public parks? And would you like to see more off-leash areas? And do you use a leash when you're out walking your dog? For more, we are joined by Sarah Shapiro-Ward. She's head trainer and co-owner of the Dog School. Sarah, thanks so much for coming in.
I'm delighted to be here. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk
It
about.
can be a bit of a hot topic for a lot of people.
Huge hot topic, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, on either side, very strong opponents for on-leash and for off-leash. I asked people to call, but I neglected to give the numbers, so let me do that real quickly. You can call us and join the conversation, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can you can also email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. So, as we were saying, like, this is a hot topic, and people passionately believe in either the right for their dog to be off leash, or they passionately believe for all dogs to be leashed. Where in your experience, do most people land, and where is that sort of common ground where everybody's, perhaps needs are being met?
I think it's very polarized between non-dog owners and people who own dogs. And I do feel like the non-dog owning population look at dogs and think, well, they should be on leash.
Right.
What's the harm? Whereas anyone who owns a dog knows that leash training is hard work for dogs, and they do need some time to express their natural behaviors, run around, get some exercise, and also participate in trail walking in order to be those good dogs who can walk nicely on leash. So it's not always effective exercise to only have a leash. And I think that's where people get a little bit stuck in their opinions because they don't really understand what dogs really need.
Right.
So yeah, I usually find that people with dogs are very strong advocates for off-leash trails.
Very much so, they can be. But what are some of the, bigger issues that an off-leash dog, can cause, or the biggest problems that people maybe see with an off-leash dog? I know I've had a dog approach me. It can be upsetting. It can be scary if you don't know the dog. You don't know what their temperament is. What are some of the other issues that people need to keep in mind if they are going to have their dog off leash?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And at the dog school, we're always teaching people, when you have your dog off leash, that is not a passive activity. You're not on your phone.
Right.
You're not just, taking in the nature. You are actually training. So we should be having our dogs under control. They should be responding to recall. It's an active exercise, you got a lot of components and pieces that you have to take into consideration there. So with Pacific Spirit, when I'm using the trails and my dogs are off leash, it's not that they're just running rampant, because that can be really scary for other trail users. If we see a person approaching, I'm calling my dogs back into heel, and we're going past, and then they're being released or
Right.
around again.
And as you said, I mean, this is what you do. You're
this is
you're
my
definitely
job.
an expert. It's your jam in terms of dogs. But a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but certainly some people are not able to have that sort of control off their dogs while they're off leash. So is it this case of sort of a few bad actors giving all the off leash owners a bad name, or does there need to be a lot more training and education around off leash that we're missing?
I think it's both. So there is some nuance here. I mean, I am one of the first people to kind of say those on-leash trails are not well enforced, and a lot of people are off-leash on those trails. Often when I'm walking a dog on-leash, on those trails will be approached by off-leash dogs, and that's not okay. So there is a piece there where there is some nuance, right? That said, I'd be really interested in reading what those 400 incidents were, and I was looking for this report. I think I missed the boat. I think it was taken off, or maybe it wasn't made public.
I think so, yeah.
But I'd love to know, what percentage of those were dogs running into bicycles, or I know when I was in Pacific Spirit about a year ago, and someone in a bicycle ran over my on-leash dog, and it was horrifying for me.
Gosh,
So I wonder how many, is that a problem? Is it dogs jumping on people? Is it dogs chasing kids? What are we dealing with here? Is it dogs barking at people? Some incidents, like bites and chasing, are really serious, and other incidents are not serious at all. So, and 400 cases over 5 years, especially if they're not all very serious, that doesn't actually strike me as a bad stat. That strikes me as a good stat. You know, we have millions of people using that park.
Right.
And millions, thousands, you know, but they're like over 5
It's very
years.
popular daily.
It's a
There are people
super
there.
popular park. Hundreds of dogs are using that park daily. And if we're only getting that many incidents and they're not all super serious, then I would argue that actually Vancouver has some of the most well-trained dogs around.
I know when we spoke last week with a representative from Metro Vancouver, he did point out to quite a few incidents of people being knocked over or being jumped on by these dogs. So we don't know the seriousness of those encounters, but you know, certainly something that can be upsetting. I was going to ask if you were shocked by the number 400, but you know, when you factor in everybody that uses it, perhaps it isn't as big as it seems when you say 400.
Yeah, I think we have to look at like how many visits are happening in order to put that number in perspective. So anyone who has dealt with stats before knows that you can present numbers in a way that looks kind of scary, and also you can present numbers in a way that doesn't. So if we were looking at this and it was a very low percentage risk, we might look at that and go, it's not actually a problem. But by presenting the whole number with no other context, we're making it look a certain way. So I almost wonder what the percentage incidents per visit looks like.
Okay.
You know?
We'll try to get that for you the next time you
love
come
that.
back. We do have lots of calls coming in, so let's get to those right away. First from Clayton in Terrace. Hi, Clayton.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. So are you an on or off leash kind of dog owner?
Off leash.
Yeah. And why is that important to you and more importantly to your dog?
Yeah, just the freedom to run around, and they get to interact with other dogs, and they seem to tire out quicker.
Fair enough. And do you notice, have you ever encountered any issues while your dog has been off leash with either people being upset with it or the dog itself perhaps getting into a bit of trouble?
Yeah, I would say that, it comes with the territory. You know, something's always going to happen. But,
and when your dog is off, when your dog's off leash, are you able to call it back quite quickly if something is kind of going sideways quick?
Yeah, I think recall is very important for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, if you should definitely have a recall for your dog if you're going to go off leash, because then you can avoid the problems.
Right. So taking that step. All right, we'll mark you down for pro off leash, Clayton. Thanks for that.
Yeah, my other idea, though, was that we should just fence in the humans and put a fence along the path, and then that way that would keep the people that are afraid of dogs away from the dogs.
You know, people are the ones causing a lot of trouble, so maybe we'll have to look into that. But for now, I think we'll let the people roam freely. We've got a call in now from Jared in Vancouver. Hi, Jared. What are your thoughts on today's topic?
Hi, I'm an on-leash walker, but when I get to the park, I let them off. We have 2 dogs. We walk with the same path, and we go to 2 parks in Vancouver every single day. I have never, in 4.5 years, seen an incident, not once. Okay. And the only incidents that I see are of people yelling at me for having my dog off leash. They're not even in the park. They're on the sidewalk. They're 200 feet away or 100 feet away, and it seems to be Karens and Chads that are making a big deal out of nothing. And I do want to also suggest that we do need more park space for dogs. There's so much unused space, and I'll give you an example. Hillcrest, massive park. There's a treat area at 33rd. They do nothing with it because of a soccer field on one side and the community center with the pool on the other. That could easily become a dog park that is accessible. We don't have dog parks in our area. You look at the taxes that we pay and the amount of dogs that are in the area, it goes without saying that we are underservicing people with dogs and the dogs themselves.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that point.
My pleasure.
And Sarah, is that something that you've noticed that you know, perhaps people are taking their dogs off leash in areas that people don't appreciate because we don't have enough dedicated spaces for that?
Yeah, it's something that resonates with me. So there are different types of off-leash areas for dogs. You know, there's the trails like Pacific Spirit. There's the big dog parks like Charleston Dog Park or Kitts Beach. And then there's the smaller dog parks that are kind of little rectangles with the gravel. I do find that, and to give credit to the city, there have been a couple parks in my area that were being used as unofficial dog parks in those small spaces, and they have made them into official dog parks, which is really nice. But I do think that, as Jared is saying, like, we are underserved. Like, so many people in Vancouver do have a dog, and there is just not sufficient infrastructure in certain areas. And it means that you have to travel. You really do have to have a car for your dog so that you can take them to the places where they can have that off-leash freedom that they all really need. So there's parts of the city where there is like a deficit, where the needs of the community is not really being met.
And I would think too, in terms of dogs not behaving properly when they're off leash, without these dedicated spaces that are easily accessible, that means you don't have a chance to safely train your dog off leash to be able. So it's this fulfilling prophecy that the dog is misbehaving because it hasn't had enough opportunities.
I call it the forbidden fruit problem. If you have a dog that just really wants to run and you have them restricted on a 6-foot leash all the time, they're constantly, their brain's going to be thinking about, like, I want to run and I want to sniff stuff and I want to do things. If you are able to let your dog have some off-leash freedom, then you clip a leash on and suddenly they're feeling fulfilled. And so you're like, hey, can you walk to a heel? And they're like, sure, absolutely.
All right.
Makes a big difference.
I've got another call in from Eulela from Victoria. Hi, Eulela.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. I love your name.
Thank you very much.
And what's your thoughts on the off-leash?
So I am the president of something called the CRD Dog Double G Society in Greater Victoria.
Okay.
And we formed when Saanich, particularly, took away 85% of the off-leash space in the municipality and left us with one less than 2 kilometer natural trail, which they are now about to fence and pen and put a bunch of gates in, which is a whole different conversation. But the issue that I think is fundamental here is that if you want to have spaces where dogs are not off-leash, you need to provide reasonable spaces where they can be off-leash safely.
Fair. So have that balance so everybody's needs are being met and they can go to where is appropriate for their dog's needs at that time. Thank you so
100%.
much.
That's huge.
And also that the dog owners, sorry, let me throw this last piece in.
Of course.
As dog owners, there are 2 things we can do to really, really turn the temperature down on all of this. One of them is carry a bag and pick up. And if you see that somebody hasn't, do what I call karma poo and pick up more.
I've never heard of karma poo before, but I love that. If you've got an extra bag, help out.
One is work on your recall. All the time, work on your recall. If we, as dog owners, took those 2 things to heart and did them all the time, most of the temperature on this would come down.
All right, such important points. Thank you so much for that, Eulela. And you were nodding yourself.
Away.
And
agree with all of this.
In terms of the karma poo, but in discussing this with friends beforehand, even out in the newsroom, that was one issue that did come up a lot. That these dogs, they will go off trails. They will do their business. It's not picked up. It can have an impact on the environment. What do you sort of say to that argument?
I mean, anyone who's walked around the streets of Vancouver will find poop everywhere. It is not an off-leash dog problem. It is it's a problem with a certain population of dog owners. And remember, dogs are pooping 2-3 times a day. If you happen to be one of those people who is not determined not to pick up their dog's poop, the leash is not going to matter. So it is a important conversation. It's irrelevant to this.
Okay. Another call coming in from Ian in Victoria as well. Hi, Ian.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I just love dogs. I just love dogs.
Me too.
But I feel that this is a very subtle subject, and I think a lot of responsibility, a huge amount of responsibility, goes to people who make the decision to take on a dog. I don't like the word own a dog, but I'll go with it because that's what we're saying. There are a lot of different breeds. Some are more reactive, some are less. And each individual who decides to adopt a dog has to take a look at what's available for their dog and what kind of breed is suitable for that life. Like a German Shepherd requires, or dogs of that type, working dogs, require lots of exercise and lots of stimulation. And if you don't have safe opportunity, then maybe that's not the breed for you. And as for going off leash, you don't do that until you are really sure that you have command, obedience, and recall. You just don't. And even with you have a Kanye Corso or a Rottweiler, it's like, you maybe want to keep that on a leash when you're out in public. But if you got a backyard, okay, you can have a more robust dog. But even in nature areas with say a golden retriever, which is about the most gentle dog you can imagine with people, they'll still go running off after wildlife and scare birds, and you can't have that. So it comes down to the individual owner being intelligent about what breed they adopt and to get to know that individual animal and establish that command obedience. And that's a bit pie in the sky asking everybody to be responsible.
Well, I think we can dare to dream a little bit, Ian. Thank you. Those are all such good points. And Sarah, is that, do people need to be a little bit more intuitive with their own specific dog? I know a lot of people maybe want to have an off-leash dog, but do you need to really get to know your dog and know what their limits are and what they're able to do?
So I think I'm a little bit biased, and the people who come to me are people who want to train their dogs, right? So the population of people that I interact with a lot are people who have put a lot of thought into their dog and are now taking classes. But also I do use Pacific Spirit regularly. I would say I'm there probably once or twice a week.
Okay.
And I also haven't had an incident. I do feel like in this city, we on the whole are taking this quite seriously, and there's a lot of pressure on people to train their dogs.
Yeah.
So I actually, in comparison to when I lived in Victoria and also when I'm traveling around the interior of BC, I actually feel like we should be quite proud of our dog owning population in Vancouver. We are on the whole doing a really, really good job with our training.
That's good.
Of course, there are people who have trouble here and there, but again, like, I'm biased. Those people come to me and they're like, I was at Pacific Spirit for the first time. I let my dog off leash and they jumped on someone. I'm so embarrassed. What do I do? And then we help them and they get to a place where they don't have to, they have that obedience that Ian's talking about, and then they feel safe on the trail. So those are the people I interact with, and I'm so proud of them. They're doing such a great job out there.
In terms of being on a trail or being in the park, what should somebody do if an off-leash dog does come at them and their dog, or their dog does go towards somebody? How can we diffuse those situations before they escalate?
Yeah, so this is a common question that I get asked, and I always answer, well, we can't train the other person's dog. So the other person's dog is coming towards you. What you can do is you can express your desire to get that dog away from you. So it's always fair to say, hey, can you call your dog? Or my dog's not friendly. My favorite thing to do is to say my dog has kennel cough and it's really contagious, because people will recall their dog really fast. But ultimately, there is nothing that you can do if an on-leash dog is running towards you to train that dog. That dog is not your responsibility. If you are very afraid of dogs, there is a little tool that you can buy that's compressed air. It's called Pet Corrector, and that does work quite well for sending the other dog away if they get really close to you. I am always telling people you should not let your dog approach other people on the trail. And if your dog gets pet corrected, that's on you, man. Like, you should be training your dog so that they have really good recall, and you shouldn't assume that everyone wants your dog in their face. You don't know what they're dealing with.
And I think that is at times where people do get tripped up with their off-leash dogs. I love my dog. I think he's the sweetest, perfect angel baby.
Me too.
You might not think that, though. So, there have been times that dogs have approached me and people are like, he's great, he's friendly, but I don't know that. I don't trust that. So I think there needs to be that recognition that just because you love your dog so much doesn't mean everybody else will enjoy
So I
it.
tend to over-argue that point because I do think that people sometimes take it for granted. And it's really important. Some people are really afraid of dogs.
They are, and they have had, they may have had an incident in their past that has caused them a lot of harm, and they're still dealing with that. So it's something you always have to be aware of. We'll get a call in now from Tom in Vancouver. Hi, Tom.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very well, thanks. I missed that last little part, which I think pertains to what my comment was. I'm a dog owner. I have a miniature Dachshund, and he's a great little guy. But one of the things that I often encounter in a lot of dog parks is I'm approached by aggressive, larger dogs that I have to defend my dog from. One of our other dogs in our family has been unfortunately attacked by the lovable, great, Labradors. And every dog has to be approached with a great degree of caution. And I think that if we expand the off-leash opportunities, it'll allow owners like me that want to keep our little dogs on leash, that flexibility to have safer trails and safer access. So I just wanted to advocate for the little guys here that we don't share necessarily the big aggressive running breeds barreling down the trail. And so it's something to take into consideration as well.
All right, Tom, thank you for that. And yes, look out for the little ones out there. Another call from Kevin in Vancouver. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
Hi, are you an off-leash fan?
Well, I think there should be more spaces for off-leash dogs. And I'm a dog owner, but I do think that people need to keep their dogs on leash more than they currently do. And that's why I'd advocate for more spaces, because I have a very large dog who's kind of similar to what one of your previous callers was saying, is a mix of a Congal and a Pyrenees, so it's a shepherding dog. And he's a very calm, well-behaved dog. But if another dog is aggressive towards him, he will respond. He's reactive.
Right.
And so people's dogs, they run up to him aggressively, and then all of a sudden I'm dealing with over 200 pounds of dog that are trying to have a conflict. And it makes it really challenging sometimes to walk them in places where I should be allowed to walk the dog on leash, and other people should be respecting that. And it's for their own well-being. Like, my dog's really big. I don't want him to. He hasn't ever harmed another dog, but he easily could. So that'd just be. I think we need more spaces for people to have their dogs off leash, but I also think we need to have people respect the places where you can't do it, and not this sort of assumption that everyone is, okay with your dog. If your dog behaves, you think your dog behaves a certain way, it's not going to necessarily interact with every dog that way, just like every person won't interact with every other person the same way.
Very true. Very true.
And a lot of times the owners, I find, get more, when you ask them to put on the leash, the dogs with the behavioral issues usually have owners that similarly behave really rudely or angrily or something when you ask them to put their dog on a leash. And so I think people have to have that responsibility for their animals. And and I think having more spaces sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Kevin. And, we keep hearing over and over again that, yes, there needs to be more spaces, but in the spaces that it's not allowed, it needs to be respected. In terms of enforcement, how would you like to see this topic approached by municipalities and by, even the province at times?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I am always, first and foremost, here to talk about education, because I feel like there's a gap here where people who are using the on-leash trail with an off-leash dog just haven't really thought things through, and they don't really understand the implications of their actions and why we really need to protect those on-leash trails. In Pacific Spirit, the way things currently are, the on-leash area does intersect with a lot of off-leash areas. People get confused, people get lost, the signage isn't great. I know that Metro Vancouver is going to improve the signage, which I'm really excited about. But then when you ask them, they say, I didn't know it was on leash, or what's the harm in my dog being off leash? Right. Having them understand, actually, some dogs need to be on leash. They have a right to enjoy the trail. And when 2/3 of dog walkers are off leash on the on leash trail, that becomes unusable for dogs who need to be on leash trail. So people who have reactive dogs can't use Pacific Spirit, even though in theory they should be able to.
As we mentioned, we're definitely a hot talker and people passionate on both sides of it, but it seems like recall and education and training is the best way to go. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. As always. Sarah Shapiro-Ward, she is the head trainer and co-owner of the Dog School. And that is it for our show today. Thank you so much for calling in and for joining the discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.